Hi again, and welcome to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. Today, we're exploring something quite personal: how learning and speaking English can feel like a way to step away from old labels. The ones you didn't choose. The ones that may have followed you for years.
Because language isn't just a tool for communication. It's also a tool for identity. And when you grow up with certain words attached to you, shy, lazy, slow, not smart, not enough, those labels can sink in deep.
But when you start speaking in a new language, something strange happens. It's like those old definitions don't quite follow you. At least not in the same way. You get a bit of space to move differently, speak differently, even think differently.
It's like English gives you a blank page. A place where you're not just translating who you used to be, you're actually discovering who you might be, when you're free from all that history.
And we're not saying the past disappears. Of course not. But in English, maybe it doesn't define you as much. Maybe people listen to you without expectations. Maybe you listen to yourself in a new way.
It's like walking into a room where no one knows your story, not your grades, your childhood, your reputation, your mistakes. They just hear you now, in this moment, in this language. And that can be incredibly freeing.
Yeah. In your native language, people might already know who you are. Or think they do. There's history in every sentence. In every accent. In every way you say something. But in English? You get to choose how much of that you bring with you.
And for some people, that means they finally feel brave enough to speak up. Or to be funny. Or to say something honest. Because in a way, English gives them distance from the version of themselves they were taught to be.
I've heard learners say, "I'm more confident in English than in my first language," and I don't think that's strange. I think it makes sense. Because confidence often comes from feeling unlabeled. From having space to grow into a new version of yourself.
And even if that version is still learning, still making mistakes, it's yours. You're building it with intention. You're choosing the words. You're shaping the rhythm. You're letting go of what doesn't fit anymore.
So English isn't just a second language. It can be a second chance. A chance to speak without the weight of who people used to say you were.
Exactly. You're not the kid who failed the grammar test. You're not the teenager who froze in front of the class. You're not the adult who never felt smart enough. In English, you're just you, here, learning, speaking, trying.
And that trying, in itself, is powerful. Because when you speak English, especially when you're still learning, you're not trying to be perfect, you're just trying to be free. Free from the pressure. Free from the past. Free to explore.
Sometimes people ask, am I running away from who I was? But maybe it's not running. Maybe it's redefining. Maybe it's saying, I get to decide who I am now, and this new language helps me do that.
And in a way, English becomes this quiet invitation to reintroduce yourself. To others, yes. But also to yourself. To say, here's who I'm becoming. Not in a loud, dramatic way. Just gently, naturally, one word at a time.
And even if your English is slow, even if you can't always say what you want, the intention is clear. The act of choosing your words, of shaping your story, is already a step toward freedom.
And freedom doesn't have to be big. It can be something like saying your name out loud in English and feeling proud. Or writing a message without checking every word twice. Or answering a question without apologizing first.
Yes. It's in those little shifts. Those quiet wins. And over time, they add up. You start feeling like, maybe I'm not who I used to be. Maybe I'm someone I never imagined I could become.
And isn't that the gift of learning a language? Not just communication, but transformation. Not just words, but a way to rebuild how you see yourself.
And the beautiful thing is, No one else needs to understand that process for it to matter. No one needs to see all the things you're shedding, the inner work you're doing, just to feel more free in a sentence.
Because this journey is personal. Deeply personal. And the progress might be invisible to the outside world, but you feel it. In the way you show up. In the way you don't shrink anymore.
You might still carry your past, we all do. But it doesn't have to speak louder than your present. Especially when your present includes a voice you've earned in a new language.
And I think there's something really healing about that. Not pretending the past didn't happen, but learning to speak from a place that isn't stuck in it. English becomes a language of possibility, not just memory.
And maybe, with every conversation you have in English, whether it's fluent or full of pauses, you're proving to yourself, I'm not limited to who I was. I can be more. I am more.
It's not always about fluency. Sometimes, it's about freedom. The kind that grows slowly. Quietly. Word by word. Until one day you realize, you don't need those old labels anymore.
You've outgrown them. And English helped you see that. Not by erasing who you are, but by giving you the courage to rewrite what that story means.
And the truth is, it's not just about escaping the labels, it's about choosing your own. Maybe you want to be seen as curious, kind, resilient, expressive. English gives you space to name yourself again.
That's such a powerful idea, naming yourself again. Because sometimes, in your native language, your name comes with too many memories. Too many assumptions. And you just want to start fresh.
And it doesn't mean you're rejecting your roots. You're not running from who you are. You're simply expanding, allowing more of you to exist than the version that got boxed in by the past.
I think a lot of learners don't realize how emotional this journey is. It's not just about pronunciation or grammar. It's about asking, who do I get to be, when I don't have to be who I used to be?
And English becomes the mirror. A different mirror. One where you can try new expressions, new tones, even new values. You start seeing yourself as someone evolving, someone not finished yet.
And what a gift that is, to not feel finished. To not feel stuck. Even if your English isn't perfect, it's alive. It's growing with you. And that means your identity is growing too.
So maybe, just maybe, English isn't just about becoming fluent. Maybe it's about becoming free. Free from the story that held you small. Free to write a new one, in your own voice.
And even if that voice is quiet at first, or unsure, it still matters. It's real. It's building something. You don't need to sound perfect to be powerful. You just need to sound like you, now.
You might notice that in English, people treat you differently. Not always because of the words you use, but because you show up differently. Maybe you hold your head higher. Maybe you speak more clearly. Maybe you believe yourself more.
And it's not that English magically fixes everything, but it shifts things. It lets you see the difference between who you were told to be and who you actually are, or want to become.
There's space in this language for that becoming. It doesn't matter if you still make mistakes. What matters is that you're giving yourself the space to speak without carrying the old weight.
And it might feel a bit strange, to speak in a new way, to act in a way that's unfamiliar, even to yourself. But that's part of it. Growth always feels unfamiliar at first. It's supposed to.
Exactly. And sometimes the hardest part isn't speaking the new language, it's allowing yourself to be someone new in it. To not shrink back into the version of you that people expected.
So if English feels like freedom for you, let it. Let it be the place where you move differently. Where you say what was once unspeakable. Where you grow into someone who feels like home, to yourself.
And there's no rush. No final version of you that you need to reach. Just this quiet unfolding, word by word, sentence by sentence, into someone who feels more honest, more present, more seen.
Because you're not just learning how to speak English. You're learning how to speak without fear. Without apology. Without all the expectations that used to make you feel small.
And even if some days still feel heavy, even if old labels try to come back, they don't fit the way they used to. That's how you know you're changing. That's how you know this version of you is real.
It's in how you pause before answering, not because you're unsure, but because you care. It's in how you say, I don't know, without shame. It's in how you try again, even when the sentence didn't land.
And in those moments, those quiet, ordinary moments, you're not escaping who you were. You're meeting who you are now. The version of you who chose to start over. Who chose to learn. Who chose to speak.
That's not weakness. That's courage. Every learner who picks up a new language isn't just studying vocabulary, they are rebuilding something. A voice. A self. A story.
So if English has helped you step outside old expectations, that's something worth honoring. Not just as language progress, but as personal growth. As freedom you gave yourself.
Because you weren't just learning how to say things differently. You were learning how to be differently. How to show up without the weight of every label, every old belief, every memory that said, you can't.
And maybe that's the most powerful part of all, when you realize you can. Not just speak, but be heard. Not just translate, but express. Not just communicate, but connect.
And you're doing it now. In your own way. With your own voice. A voice that doesn't need to be compared to anyone else's. A voice that doesn't need to sound like a textbook.
Because that voice, it's been through things. It's carried doubt, fear, silence, and still chose to speak. That's not weakness. That's strength in its rawest form.
And every time you speak English, especially when it feels hard, you're reminding yourself that you're not who people used to say you were. You're someone who kept going. Someone who chose to grow.
That's something not everyone will see, but you know it. And that quiet knowing, it's yours to carry. Yours to build on. Yours to speak from, again and again.
So if English has helped you shed the labels that never fit, let it keep doing that. Let it keep being the language where you feel most yourself, even if that self is still forming.
Because you don't owe anyone the version of you they expect. You only owe yourself the chance to grow, to heal, and to speak in a voice that feels like freedom.
Thanks for joining us today on the British Accent Podcast. We hope this conversation reminded you that your past doesn't get to define your future, and your voice, in English or in any language, is yours to reclaim.
And wherever you are in your journey, know this, you're not starting over, you're starting forward. And we're proud of you for every word you've dared to say.
We'll see you next time.